Fantasy Focus Football Podcast is presented by Century 21.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy Focus.
No Case of the Mondays here on the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. Field and Matthew hanging out with you. We're not calling in sick like Jalen Ramsey to the Jaguars.
Yeah, you know what? I actually have a bit of a tickle in my
you're
throat.
literally sick.
Like I'm legit sick. Like
you've
I
got
have,
medicine
like
right
I mean,
here.
like for people watching on Twitter or YouTube or the ESPN app or our Facebook page, like I just held up like a big bag of medicine that I got at the drugstore on the way in. Like,
Did you just buy one of everything?
Pretty much. Like
I see some coldies.
I got some coldies
Tylenol,
and the Aleve cold and sinus. Aleve cold and sinus. Game changer. Like I swear by that stuff. Not an ad. Hashtag not an ad. By the way.
Right.
Just actual. Just anyway. So yeah. I mean, so I woke up. My throat's on fire. I'm feeling under the weather. Maybe a little bit worn down. You know, we keep late hours here and work hard.
Haven't even played yet this week.
And yet I'm here. Unlike Jalen Ramsey, I showed up to work.
Matthew shows up to work. Let's get to the football.
Rewind.
Fantasy news
from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
The day was in some ways defined on Sunday by fill-in quarterbacks. And Matthew, 3 fill-in quarterbacks were stars on Sunday. Kyle Allen stepped in for the Carolina Panthers.
You're welcome.
Jacoby Brissett continued his hot play with the Colts. And Danny Dimes, baby, Daniel Jones, the savior, the heir apparent, the future, the present, the God, Daniel Jones stepped in and had a marvelous day for the New York Giants. We've got 3 players that all played really well this week, Matthew. All guys had 20-plus fantasy points. Can one of these players, or all of these players, be a fill-in quarterback that could actually take over your starting spot with guys like Drew Brees hurt, Ben Roethlisberger out for the season, Baker Mayfield struggling, Cam Newton, who knows when he'll return? Have we found saviors for your fantasy lineup?
Maybe. Look, so I think we need to take it one by one, right? So first off, let's talk about Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen's legit. I mean, we talked about this field. You and I talked about this last week. I talked about it a lot sort of on my social media feed as well, that Kyle Allen is a lot better than you think. Like, I remember tweeting that out, something like when their first report, like, hey, Cam might miss this game. Like, I think if you look at my timeline, like on Tuesday or something like that, and you search my name and Kyle Allen, like, and so, like, this is a guy who performed well last year in a Week 17 start against the Saints. Now, it was mostly Saints backups, but whatever. He did what he should have, right? So, look, he's had 2 starts, 53 pass attempts. He's got 6 passing touchdowns. That's an 11.3% touchdown rate. Like, Patrick Mahomes' touchdown rate was 8.8% last year. I'm not
Kyle
obviously
Allen better than Patrick Mahomes.
Right, exactly. There you go.
Exactly
very hot take, very hot takey. Yeah, exactly. Put me on a debate show. No, what I'm saying here, Field, is that whatever he's gotten 2 starts. He's gotten 2 starts in favorable matchups. But you know what? He's done what a good quarterback should do in starts against favorable matchups, which is he has produced. He looked great. I would argue that he is a better passer, pure passer at this point of his career than Cam Newton, who is clearly not 100% healthy.
Right. I'm not quite there yet, but I can certainly, I don't think it's a crazy statement, right? Part of me hesitates to give a guy that crown over Cam 2 starts into his career versus the 9th season for Cam.
I understand, but Cam has never been a good passer.
Sure, yeah.
Cam has been a very good quarterback. Cam has been a dynamic player in this league. He has been a fantasy superstar, but it's because of the multidimensionality, if that's sort of a word, it is now. Right, of his full game, right? And so it's the athleticism, it's the running, but he's never been the most accurate passer. Thirsty Kyle, what's his career completion percentage?
It's bad. So
Cam, I mean, it's like 58% or something like that, 57, something like that.
It's 58.6.
58.6%. So the question then becomes for Kyle Allen and then Jacoby Brissett and Daniel Jones. Can Kyle Allen be a weekly starter for you going forward?
As long as he has the job, I believe so. Okay. So look, there's a couple of things here that worked in his favor, which is
matchup,
great matchup here, and the fact that their defense is okay. Like they were running their offense. So I think as long as he is the starting quarterback, and that's the problem here.
We don't know when he's going to be the
Cam
starting
might be
quarterback.
back. Cam might be come back this week. We don't. We just don't know. I will say this: their upcoming schedule is okay. So they're at Houston this week. You're not scared about that. Like, I think that's a decent matchup there. I mean, Phillip Rivers just lit them up. Jackson, they're at home. It's an okay. I mean, it's not a scary matchup. I don't know that it's an easy one, but it's not a scary one.
I get it. Yep.
They're home to Jacksonville. Then they have Tampa Bay and London. I think that's a decent matchup. And then they have a bye week.
So let's get to Jacoby Brissett then, because maybe he has more long-term value, especially understanding that Kyle Allen could be done as a starter next week. Literally. We don't know. It's very early on. Brissett had 20.8 fantasy points.
Here's a question that was asked to me, though, and I'll just ask it to you very quickly on Kyle Allen. Are you selling high on DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen, because their value actually takes a hit when Cam comes back?
No, I'm not. Because I think that part of their improvement was not just the quarterback play, but also that in the case of the two receivers, they're young, improving, ascending players in their career. With Greg Olsen, the problem is, like, what better tight end? If you could get George Kittle, sure. But I don't think you're going to be able to get a guy that is a total, no doubt about it, stud tight end. And there are so few of them that I'd rather ride the hot hand of Olsen.
I agree with all that. As long as Olsen's healthy, he's obviously a very viable starter here. But I guess what I would say here before we move on to Jacoby Brissett very quickly, I don't think Kyle Allen's a fluke. I don't know that he's always going to have this kind of game, again, because it was a good matchup here, but I don't think Kyle Allen is a fluke. I think there's a reason he beat out Will Grier in the preseason here. There's a reason why I was talking him up this upcoming week. Like, Kyle Allen can play.
So Jacoby Brissett has multiple passing touchdowns in each of his 3 games so far this season. He had his first 300-yard passing game of the season on Sunday. People know more about Jacoby Brissett than they do about Kyle Allen. And if you want to talk about favorable schedules coming up,
sure.
In the next 3 games that Brissett plays, he's got a bye tucked in there as well. He plays the Raiders at home, the Chiefs in Kansas City. The Chiefs continue to struggle to defend the run too.
Right. And you have to throw to keep up with them.
Right. You have to throw to keep up. And then Houston, which would be in week 7. Should Jacoby Brissett be a player that should be at the top of the quarterback depth chart to pick up this week?
Yeah, look, I like Jacoby Brissett. And I remember when Andrew Luck announced his retirement, and I was just like, guys, Jacoby Brissett's a lot better than you think. And everyone's like, oh, the sky is falling. And I'm like, Jacoby Brissett, I know the numbers in 2017 don't look great, but he's now been in this system for, he's been in the Colts for a couple years. He's been in Frank Reich's system for over a year.
Right.
It's one of the best offensive lines in football, and he's surrounded by much more talent in 2019 than he was in 2017. He's also a little bit older. And then you saw the Colts give him the big contract before the season started, sort of a sign of confidence there in Jacoby Brissett as not just a sort of a fill-in guy, but we think you're a guy that can lead our franchise at least for the next 2 years. So the question, yes, but with a caveat. I think it depends on who else is out there on your waiver wire and sort of the size of your league. So I think Jacoby Brissett more legit than not. You and I are in a dynasty league. Like, I have Jacoby Brissett in that dynasty league. It's a deep 12-team Superflex league. Super Secret Squirrel's in that league as well. I just want to point out real quickly that Secret Squirrel has Lamar Jackson in that league, but I still managed to beat him in week 1.
Congratulations.
I just want to point that out, just as long as we're talking about that league. Just a quick mention. But anyway, Field, the problem here is that he's not running that much.
At all.
Right. I mean, so
I think he had 3 rushes for 4 yards yesterday and barely running.
Right. So he's not running a ton, and it's still a run-first offense. What they want to do in Indianapolis, at least initially, seems like that they want to run. Like, the Colts were 29th in drop-back percentage this season. This is the first game against the Falcons where it felt like they sort of, opened up let the reins loose a little bit, if you will, on Jacoby Brissett.
Which is why I believe the quarterback that I would most prefer to pick up this week would be Daniel Jones. And call me crazy for taking the bait after 1 game. I'll live with it if that's what it takes. But some of the factors that you just pointed out, I'll get to in a moment. But Daniel Jones had a record-setting day, leading the Giants to their biggest come-from-behind victory since 1970. Right. Against your Redskins.
Yeah, of course. I was just 40 years old back then.
Your 40th birthday party.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones looked phenomenal yesterday.
Danny Dimes.
He is going to be the starter going forward. There's no concern about that, as is the case with Kyle Allen. You just talked about how Jacoby Brissett, it was the first time they had to kind of air it out because the offensive line is so good. The running game is so good. The defense is so competent.
And there's also a little bit of a concern with Jacoby Brissett in terms of, T.Y. Hilton right?
We'll talk about T.Y. more
coming
just
up.
to fill in that injury info. But so Daniel Jones, they're going to have to play high-octane games every week because Daniel Jones' defense just figured out, or just, I guess, they just resurrected Jameis Winston yesterday. So 416 passing yards in the preseason. He had 330-plus passing yards yesterday.
Yeah.
He was a vertical thinking quarterback. He rushed for 2 touchdowns. And we talked about this. You talked about this yesterday on Fantasy Football Now, and maybe on the podcast too. He's an athletic guy. More rushing yards than maybe people understood he was capable of because, Matthew, you know why? No one watched Duke football.
That's right.
So we had no idea that he was as good of an athlete as he actually is.
Yeah, I mean,
there's some legit stuff here.
Look, and this isn't all backpatting because I certainly get calls wrong every week, all week, and including this week. But Kyle Allen, Jacoby Brissett, I've been on since the beginning. Kyle Allen and Daniel Jones, I believe, both made my others receiving votes in the love-hate column this week. They were both loves. I know Kyle Allen definitely was, and as you mentioned, I talked up Daniel Jones on the Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus on the podcast last week, and certainly on Fantasy Football Now, where I talked about the fact that here's a kid that had over 1,300 rushing yards when he was at Duke, that he's more mobile than you think, and that it's a bad defense, so he's going to have to throw. Now, the upcoming schedule is interesting, right? So home to my Redskins, that should be an easy one. The Redskins will be traveling on a short week. Home to the Vikings. I think there's probably some junk time there against the Vikings. And then at New England, that one makes me nervous. But then home to Arizona. And to your point, this is a guy that's going to have the gig. That is going to have the gig. There is a floor there because of the rushing. And look, he's not Lamar Jackson when it comes to the rushing, but he is, he's somewhere between Aaron Rodgers back in the day, in terms of his rushing. And I'm trying to think of a good comp for like his rushing. Because
Andrew Luck?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Luck when, like sort of Russell Wilson-ish. No, I mean, maybe not as much as Russell, but like.
Russell's a better athlete than Daniel Jones.
Sure, of course.
Here's the point. The point is that.
But he's going to run some.
Functional athlete who maybe not necessarily as many design runs as some of the elite rushers, but I believe the first rushing touchdown of the two may have actually been
a designed run. It was an RPO. It was an RPO, and he made the choice to run to the pylon, and he beat the guy there.
So that asset plus the passing game value gives me reason to be confident in Daniel Jones. But that was not the only story pertaining to the Giants yesterday, Matthew.
Yeah.
Perhaps in some ways, actually, the biggest story.
Not in some ways.
This
is the biggest story in fantasy.
Oh, but you know what? It was sort of drowned out because of how good Daniel Jones was. But Saquon Barkley celebrated with his teammates on Sunday. That was good. The bad part, he was in a walking boot and on crutches. And here's what we know about Saquon Barkley. He's got a sprained ankle. It's being called a high ankle sprain. He's having an MRI today. This is a massive, massive issue in fantasy. We don't know exactly how much time he will miss, Matthew, but this is 1.01. The question becomes this.
The consensus number one pick in fantasy this year.
Some people that have Saquon might have good enough depth that they can get by in the meantime. But most people will be looking for a replacement back for as long as Saquon is out. The first
This
question
is one of those weeks, by the way, Secret Squirrel, where I'm very happy that I don't write the free agent finds column.
That
on
is my job
ESPN.com.
instead.
Yeah, so Fields got to sit there and try to talk up Wayne Gallman. You know what I mean? That's what he's got to do when this show is over. He's got to go to his computer
the way that you're
and he's got to talk. He's got to try to convince people that let's Frank Gore.
Hey, it's a sexy job and someone's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes me believe. By the way, Matthew, that. But what you just said.
No, Ronald Jones. I swear. What do you got?
So you've kind of already given us the analysis before the question's even been asked.
Yeah.
Do you believe that Wayne Gallman? What is his value as a fill-in until Saquon returns? And if you don't believe in Wayne
what
Gallman,
he is? He's a warm body. He's a warm body. Look, if you get enough, we think this offense takes a step up with Danny Dimes under center. Okay, so we believe there'll be more opportunity. And if you're the guy, if you're a starting running back in the NFL, there is fantasy value to be had just because it's just such an awful position. We're going to talk about some of the big names that disappointed on Sunday coming up here in a little bit, right? So, and I think Thirsty Kyle, what was the stat you gave me on Wayne Gallman? Something to the effect of like that he said like in games in which he's gotten double-digit touches, he's averaging over 10 fantasy points a game. Do I have that right?
For his career, 10.4 points per game when he gets at least 10 touches in a game.
So we expect, that's usable. That's usable, but here's the thing.
Okay, go ahead.
He's not Saquon. Like, he's not even close.
Okay, so along those
which
lines.
Which is not fair.
So
I mean, no one is, but.
I think your analysis of Wayne Gallman is fine. I agree. Like, I think he reminds me of Peyton Barber in terms of what I would expect the workload to look like. He's a better pass catcher, so he does have some pass catching ability. So I think that maybe Peyton Barber is a reasonable, like a guy that is a starting running back, not because he's a starting level running back, but because the team no longer has a starting level running back on the roster. Yeah. But other options to fill in, Matthew, would be guys that you just mentioned.
But before we move on to the fill in guys, I just want to go back real quickly. So these are the questions. Like, let's pretend Saquon Barkley is going to miss significant amount of time, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, right? Yep. Does that change your outlook on Daniel Jones? Because that would be, some people would say like, hey, without Saquon Barkley does that give you any pause?
I don't think so, because 62% of the snaps yesterday were without Saquon Barkley on the field. And I get it, bad Bucs defense. But
and by the way, bad Bucs defense, and also, again, I'm just playing devil's advocate because I'm in on Daniel Jones as well. But playing devil's advocate here for a second, do you feel like, so no Saquon Barkley, and also you think about bad Bucs defense and they were down. Like the Buccaneers were up, so he was like,
but
they were in like.
Have to do that every week. Is it
right?
Their
That's
defense
the argument.
is so bad. I mean, their best defensive back yesterday was getting torched left and right. That being, of course,
Janoris Jenkins, Mike Evans. I mean,
so
Evans just took him to the woodshed.
So we have modest expectations right now for Wayne Gallman. The problem is, Matthew, it's not much better besides that.
No.
The two names that come to mind for me are Frank Gore and also Ronald Jones. And we'll get to Jones in a second. But Frank Gore is comparable to Kyle Allen in the sense that the normal starter could be back as soon as this week. Devin Singletary could be back this week. We don't know yet. He missed practice all week last week. But Gore yesterday had a very Frank Gore-like day. 76 rushing yards, 14 attempts, a touchdown, 2 catches for 13 yards. He's fine. Now, he also plays the Patriots next weekend, which when you play the Patriots, good things tend not to happen as an offensive player so far this year. So you're talking about potentially starting Frank Gore against the Patriots, and then we'll see if Devin Singletary is back in week 5. I personally don't have much confidence there. And then finally, Matthew, Ronald Jones, who's available in 58% of leagues, who many people that were watching that Giants game yesterday also took notice of Ronald Jones. 121 total yards, including a 41-yard catch. Here's the problem there, Matthew. I'm not even sure if he's going to play at all next week for the Buccaneers, right? I mean, they're so inconsistent, or he's so inconsistent. They have 3 running backs they rely upon, and Peyton Barber, although uninspiring, also was 1 carry fewer than Ronald Jones yesterday. So there's not a great, obvious running back fill-in this week.
I have a couple of guys for you. Can I give you a couple of guys to sort of throw at you right here? So first off, I'll just throw out some names, and I haven't got through and ranked them. That's your job. You'll do this with free agent finds, but just some suggestions for you to throw down there. Carlos Hyde's rostered in only 53% of leagues, which is just over your threshold. You always keep it at 50% or under, but just, listen, he's available in 47% of leagues. He scored yesterday, obviously not a lot, but he is a starting running back. How about Raheem Mostert? Right, who looks good? They go on a bye. It's a 3-headed monster. Jeff Wilson's vulture.
Again,
I get it.
Yep.
But we're talking up Wayne Gallman. You know what I mean? And Ronald Jones,
clear-cut running back.
How about? So I got 2 other guys for you. Then I'll throw out 2 other guys for you. You tell me what you think. How about Darrell Williams, Kansas City?
He's also. We'll talk about him more later on in the show. But yes, he is on the waiver wire column this week.
He should be. And also, we're going to talk about this coming up in a second here. But what about Jamal Williams?
Yeah, Jamal Williams, a guy that I'm struggling with right now in terms of how he fits on the waiver wire column. Playing a lot more, maybe the upside's a little bit tapped because of the fact that Aaron Jones, is getting the short yardage work and getting most of the goal line work right now. But as a fill-in, there's some fill-in value there.
What I'm searching for here, because it's so ugly and desperate. Guys with a pulse.
Yeah.
And he has a pulse, and so certainly you're encouraged by his usage here in week 3. I got one last guy for you, just to throw out there. Available in 85% of ESPN leagues.
Okay.
Sexy Rexy Burkhead.
Yeah, he's on my waiver wire column. I think the question would be two things. One, yesterday he played a ton because James White was absent
out,
because of having a father.
Yes.
And then we'll talk more about Sony Michel. But if Sony Michel gets things moving a little bit here, Matthew, we'll see. Again, Wayne Gallman is right now, it's him and Eli Penny in terms of healthy running backs on the Giants roster.
Right, you have to wonder, do they sign somebody as well? Do they get some depth?
Got a couple of players on the practice squad right now.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel, tell us a little bit about Sleep Number, if you'd be so kind.
Field, do you have a favorite NFL player? Because I know I do.
Kerryon Johnson.
Kerryon Johnson's yours? That's funny. Josh Dotson is mine.
Nice.
How much better do you think they could play and or recover with good quality sleep? Probably a lot for Josh Dotson, right?
Let's talk about Terry McLaurin. How about that?
I mean, Josh Dotson's probably sleeping on a better rock.
What Kenny Galladay do? I haven't looked at his stats yet. Can you just tell me what the Kenny Galladay did yesterday?
Imagine if he had a Sleep Number bed to be able to sleep on. All right, let me tell you why Sleep Number is the smartest choice for better sleep and the best bed for couples. Listen up here, Field. Sleep Number beds allow you to adjust on each side to your ideal firmness, comfort, and support. The Sleep Number 360 smart bed senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you sleeping comfortably throughout the night. With Sleep IQ technology inside the bed, it tracks how you're sleeping so you can know every morning how well you've slept. And it gains insights for your best sleep. Experience the smart, effortless comfort of the Sleep Number 360 smart bed. Find your competitive edge with proven quality sleep starting from $9.99. Sleep Number is the official sleep and wellness partner of the NFL, and you'll only find Sleep Number at one of their 575 Sleep Number stores nationwide. Find the one nearest you at sleepnumber.com/FFF. That's sleepnumber.com/FFF.
All right, Daniel. So the latest in the Antonio Brown saga is that he is no longer a Patriot. Antonio Brown was released on Friday by the Patriots. Listen, if you don't, you all know the story. We don't have to get into the who, what, where, when, and why for Antonio Brown. He's not with the Patriots. I don't think he'll be a Patriot. I don't think he'll be an NFL player for a long time here, Matthew. Julian Edelman also left yesterday's game a little bit early. It's a rib injury, according to Adam Schefter. The early prognosis is she should be okay. So with Edelman banged up, Antonio Brown gone, does Josh Gordon's value catapult? And Josh Gordon, by the way, left the game briefly yesterday after, looked like, I don't know.
He had an inconsistent game yesterday.
Josh Gordon did, yeah, but he hurt his finger at one point. It looked like, I don't know if it was dislocated, broken, but he finished the game, so it doesn't seem like major concerns. But Josh Gordon, does his value catapult, or could Philip Dorsett be a waiver wire addition this week?
I think both.
Yeah.
I think both. I mean, so they're still sort of finding their offense, right? I mean, so, which is, it's scary to think about, but listen, AB was out, then he's in, I agree. Josh Gordon. I mean, when you think about, what Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick planned in the offseason, they didn't know if they were getting Josh Gordon. Right. They planned for an offense without Josh Gordon, right? And so you were seeing like Jacoby Myers in the preseason a lot, and you were seeing, some Philip Dorsett, and and then Gronk retires, obviously, and then they get Josh Gordon reinstated. Then the Antonio Brown situation presents itself, so they sign him, they try to integrate him, and then obviously that falls apart. And so it's still, believe it or not, a work in progress, which is a scary thought, but it is. And so my expectation is how I would rank them rest of the season as we sit right now is not a surprise, right? I would go Edelman, Josh Gordon, and then Philip Dorsett. But to answer your question about Dorsett, do I think he should be rostered? Do I think he's a viable waiver wire pickup? I do. He's had 2 games this year where Antonio Brown hasn't played for the Patriots. 10 catches, 11 targets, 148 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, had the big game against Pittsburgh. Obviously had a nice game yesterday. Feels like without Rob Gronkowski there, they're going in more 3-wide sets.
Exactly the point, Terry. Completely agree. That's the reason why this is different than years previous, is that there is no Rob Gronkowski. Matt LaCosse has been banged up. Ben Watson returns after week 4, but still, like, it's a wait-and-see mode. This is a 35-year-old tight end, I believe it is. So I think that Josh Gordon, so Edelman locked in as a wide receiver 2 when healthy. Josh Gordon, probably a flex play right now when he's healthy, which he's,
with some
we think
upside.
We're fine.
Right.
Certainly, I mean, he had a catch yesterday that reminded you of the upside. But I think Philip Dorsett's going to be a wide receiver 4 now, week to week. There are going to be weeks where he doesn't score. But we talk about trust with Tom Brady. He certainly has plenty of that. We talk about reliability. There was the play that he did not catch yesterday was one that was ruled an incompletion on the field. Bill Belichick challenged it. Philip Dorsett was sure that he caught it. And if you look at the replay, it was one of those that, like, probably a catch.
Had they called it a catch on the field, it would have remained a catch, right?
Correct. Something like, I want to say he has a streak right now. If you were to imagine that was actually a catch, something like 28 out of his last 28 targets he's caught. So reliability, upside because he's fast, and then right now he's great Julian Edelman insurance as well.
Sure.
So I think we feel good that all three of these Patriots wide receivers, we know Edelman and Gordon are rostered in all leagues, but I believe, and I think it sounds like you believe, that Philip Dorsett also needs to be rostered in many leagues.
By the way, look at their upcoming schedule. At Buffalo, so that's a tough matchup. Bills, right? But then at Washington, home to the Giants, at the Jets again. I mean, just come on.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Come on, schedule makers.
Certainly feels like the Patriots passing game should continue to find its way.
Real quickly, we didn't talk about this pre-show meeting, but we just brought it up. Just the Antonio Brown news happened over the weekend, or after we had done our show. It happened on Friday afternoon. We'd done our show on Friday, and so very quickly. If you have Antonio Brown on your roster in a redraft league, are you fine to drop him?
Fine to drop him.
I agree.
For two reasons. First of all, I don't think he's going to play for a while. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it just sounds like that. And then also, Matthew, and I've heard a lot of this, and maybe people felt this way long ago about Antonio Brown. But, and I said this yesterday in Fantasy Football Now, some people feel morally uncomfortable rostering a player with so much surrounding him right now off the field, regardless of whether he is reinstated or, finds work and then is placed on the commissioner's exempt list and then reinstated eventually. Some people just want to move on from him. They just don't agree with the character of him, and that's your prerogative. But yes, totally fine to drop Antonio Brown.
Yeah, there's a lot of allegations against him. An investigation is ongoing, and so we're not sitting here saying someone is innocent or guilty, but merely there's a number of charges against him, and the reports have been out there that teams are maybe interested, but certainly want to wait to see how those investigations play out.
Would it surprise you if this investigation took the entire season? Because it wouldn't surprise me.
It would not surprise me at all. It honestly, it would surprise me more if Antonio Brown played again this year than the opposite. My expectation is that it's probably not until 2020 that we see Antonio Brown on an NFL team.
All right, let's play a game of sort of modified panic and patience.
But I would say this, like, again, morals aside, and you can decide whether, but just from a pure fantasy football standpoint, I am hanging on to him in a keeper league. If I have Antonio Brown on my team in a dynasty or keeper league, again, I'm
understood.
Merely talking about from a fantasy football perspective, I do think there's a decent chance he will play again in the NFL at some point.
We've got 8 players here, excuse me. I don't know, 7 or 8. I can't really count. We're going to go back and forth, Matthew. I'm going to start with you first.
Okay.
And we kind of have sort of 3 tiers that I've put them into. One is that you're panicked about this player, and you're benching him this week. The second is you're panicked about this player, but you're kind of resigned that, like, he's good enough to stay in your lineup, and what are you going to do? You can't trade him for commensurate value. The third one is, you may think you're panicked, but he's going to get it right, and I'm continuing to start this player with confidence. Got it?
Yeah.
All right, so we go back and forth. You have Stephon Diggs. Boom. Clock is on. All yours.
I am panicked a little bit, but still rolling him out there. I don't know that you're going to be able to trade for a wide receiver that has the upside of Stephon Diggs. I get it. This is a a crazy run-heavy team. Vikings averaging just 21 passes per game. You think about the Seahawks last year, they were the run-heaviest team in the NFL. Even the Seahawks last year averaged over 26 passing attempts a game. So they are even lower than the run-heaviest team in the NFL last year. Having said that, it's been like they blew out the Vikings, they blew out the Falcons at home against the Packers, right? They played the Packers in week 2, I believe, right? And Diggs got, I want to say off the top of my head, he got 7 targets in that game. He caught a touchdown in that game. It was only one pass. He caught a touchdown in that game, but he had another touchdown called back because of the questionable pick play here. Look, believe it or not, since Kevin Stefanski took this team over in terms of the play calling, their offense coordinator, Stephon Diggs has touchdowns in 4 of the 6 games. The other thing about Stephon Diggs is he was banged up in week 1 against the Falcons. So I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can really count that, right? So anyway, look, I get it. I understand. Listen, I have Diggs on a team, but I don't know that you can here's a guy that he caught over, I think, didn't he catch 100 balls last year? I want to say that.
He did. He had over 100 catches last year.
The talent is too much. Like, I think they'll be in closer games. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm still rolling him out there. I'm not looking to try to sell him for 50 cents on the dollar.
Next one for me is Sony Michel, and Sony Michel was drafted as RB22. He's got 45 carries for 108 yards. That's 2.4 yards per carry. He's got as many catches as I do this year, 0. He's got 2 touchdowns, which is why I'm panicked, but I'm continuing to trot him out there. Matthew, you just mentioned the Patriots' upcoming schedule. After week 4 against the Bills, it's a pretty light load for the 3 weeks after that. My feeling on Sony Michel is that touchdown dependency was going to be a part of his value going into this season. It's even more a part of his value than I anticipated it being, but I still have Sony Michel as a player that I am panicked about, yet starting week to week, because running back depth is so incredibly, awfully, terribly poor. You get Kerryon Johnson, Matthew.
By the way, I agree with that on Sony Michel. I have a lot of Sony Michel this year, and it's not terrific, but I will say anecdotally, it does feel like every year people worry about the Patriots offensive line, what's going on, and then eventually they always get it figured out. The schedule is going to be
better as the season goes on. Yep.
As the season goes on, Sony Michel is too talented, too young, and even in a game in which James White missed, Damon Harris still didn't get on the field.
Right. So Kerryon Johnson for you, Matthew. Same thing here. Where are you at?
Again, at a different position, I might be more panicked here, but the volume has been nothing short of terrific. Had 21 touches in week 3. They got rid of C.J. Anderson, and we like Ty Johnson as kind of a deep league flyer, as someone to stash in Dynasty, but like he's getting a tremendous amount of work. And then I guess he made the hate list this week, and it was because of how good that Eagles line is. And this is incredible. I mean, even though he scored a touchdown in this game, I still got that one right. Like, I self-grade myself, because how love-hate goes is, basically I take the projection and whether they're under or if they match it. And so, like, I still got this one right because he still came in under his projection even with a touchdown. So, but still, like, actually, I'm not all that worried about Kerryon Johnson because I think he's a talented player. I think the volume is there. It's been a circumstance of sort of matchups coming up. And then what's his upcoming schedule?
Got the Chiefs next week in Detroit.
Yep.
And then you got a bye.
Okay.
And then you've got a couple more teams after that we're currently pulling up on the ESPN.com
So we're getting the schedule right now.
Let me just say this really quickly, though.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that is panicked because with Theo Riddick leaving this offense, it felt like he was going to be more involved in this passing game. And we were saying it's very possible that 50 to 60 catches were going to happen this year. He's got 5 catches through 3 games. And that's a part of his game that that has to get figured out.
I'm not, again, he's going to play so many snaps. I think yesterday is the model.
Right.
75% of the running. He was incredible in terms of usage yesterday.
I mean, look, so got into week 1, got into a shootout with Arizona, right? I mean, they had to, wasn't used as much there, and C.J. Anderson was there, right? But you had a good game against the Chargers in week 2. At Philadelphia, that's a tough matchup. Home to Kansas City in week 4, then the bye in week 5. Then they're at the Packers, home to the Vikings, home to the Giants, at Oakland. So it gets easier there for a stretch. Other than the Vikings, you're not really scared of any of those run defenses coming up in the next few weeks. So again, given the volume and given the low bar of success you need to have to be a viable RB2, I am not panicked on Kerryon Johnson. I think he's going to be fine.
James Conner has me panicked
as an RB2.
I'm not close. I'm not super close to benching him.
Right.
But I would consider selling low, which I tell you, like, rarely do I ever advocate for selling low on James Conner. And here's the reason why. He's got 34 carries for 97 yards with a touchdown rushing the football. That part's not good. He's got 11 catches for 70 yards. You know who did not touch the ball at all yesterday? Jalen Samuels. It makes me super nervous here. What if the Steelers, and they have a lot of self-scouting to do, the offense is not the only issue right now in Pittsburgh. Mason Rudolph did not inspire a lot of confidence yesterday. And what if they say to themselves, hey, part of our impetus going forward to get better, or part of our strategy to get better going forward is to actually utilize Jalen Samuel? This has me nervous, Matthew. I'm going to play him again this week. He'll probably still be ranked as a top 20 back for me. But one more bad week, and I'm certainly fishing for offers for James Conner. It has been a really, really poor start for this Pittsburgh running game. How about Chris Carson for you?
If there's one thing I would say here is that came into the week banged up. I think this is a tougher matchup than people give it credit for. Like the 49ers have played good defense so far this year. They're at home to the Bengals in week 5.
Tends to help things,
in week 4. They're home to the Bengals in week 4. Actually on Monday Night Football. I'm a company man.
Barn burner.
Andy Dalton and the Bengals against Mason Rudolph and the Steelers. Only on ESPN, America. Only on ESPN. So my point is that if he can't do it against the Bengals, then it's time to full-on panic. But you can run on the Bengals. The weird part is that what was supposed to be one of the strengths of the Steelers, their offensive line, have not played well this year.
So good stuff there. How about Chris Carson for you, Matthew? He fumbled yesterday. Fumbleitis, butterfingers. But where
he's
you
lost. He's lost a fumble in all 3 games so far this year, and so. Where I am is, can I give you an answer when I know about the health of Rashad Penny? Can I do that? Can I punt on it? Like, in essence, like, if Rashad Penny is fully healthy, I mean, like, I feel like, and I haven't had a chance to go through, because we're doing this podcast at 10 o'clock in the morning, I haven't had a chance to go through the play-by-play, but I don't think after Chris Carson lost that fumble, I don't think he played again. And if he did, it was very sparingly. It was a lot of CJ Procise after that. After
they were
the Saints,
also down big. Keep that in mind. But that was part of the reason why, is because he lost a fumble.
He lost a fumble. It was returned for a touchdown.
Yep.
And he's now fumbled in 3 straight games. Here's the if you want something that gives you pause or gives you some confidence if you have Chris Carson. Entering the season, he has 2 career lost fumbles, right? And so it has not been a big part of his game. And then you've got Rashad Penny, who missed this game because he was banged up and has been banged up in his career, as well. And so you think about, preseason of his rookie year, everything like that. So it may be Chris Carson's job. He may hold on to it just because they got no one else. They're not going out there with CJ Procise. So assuming Chris Carson is still the starter, I'm still sort of rolling him out there. He makes me nervous, though. I think his leash is very short. And I will say, if I have Chris Carson, I'm doing whatever I can to get Rashad Penny, who's still available in about 32% of ESPN leagues. So needs to be rostered in 100% of leagues. And hopefully, if you have to even pay up a little bit more to whoever has Rashad Penny in your league, I think it's worth it, because having the running back of the Seahawks will be valuable. And I don't think it's going to be a committee. I think it'll be one guy or the other getting the majority of work.
No need to overthink Todd Gurley, our next player here, who falls into the category that he has to fall into. He falls into the category of you're panicked, but you have to continue to play him. You can't trade him. He went 9th overall on average. You're not getting commensurate value. No. You can't burn a first-round pick like that. You also can't start him and say, there's not signs right now that tell you he's going to be amazing.
He got 4 points last night. 4 points.
He's got 4 catches for 8 yards this year, Matthew.
That's the biggest concern. Daniel was talking about the concern about Kerryon Johnson not being used in the passing game, and that is a weird concern. But that one feels like it gets corrected sooner than later, right? You know what I mean?
Hope so, yeah.
You would hope so. Like, I feel like game plan wise, they wanted to attack down the field against Philadelphia because their corners are so bad. Feels like that gets corrected at some point, especially because we've seen it in the past. We've seen Stafford and Kerryon Johnson, be used in the passing game here. The Todd Gurley thing is bizarre that he's just like, he wasn't targeted last night.
Right.
Field. Like,
he was barely targeted at all, right? But 4 catches for 8 yards in 3 games. And Matthew,
and he doesn't look like the same guy.
I love Todd Gurley.
Me too. Who
my
doesn't?
Favorite player in the NFL, besides Kerryon Johnson. But you watch him run. Where's the juice? Where is the guy that used to just hurtle over defenders and get better as the game went on? I'm bummed to see it.
I will
say, so far, it does not look like that. There's a lot of season left, but so far, it does not look like that.
No, I will say this. It does feel like he gets better as the game goes on. Like, I thought there were some runs in the second half that looked better than they were in the first half, and I've seen that a couple of times with Gurley. But it has been a slog. And the Malcolm Brown thing, look, he only played, I think, 2 series last night, and so that, like, the 2 touchdowns in week 1 for Malcolm Brown, that was a fluke. So, and, Todd Gurley scored in week 2. He came within a yard of scoring in week 3, and frankly, he should have gotten it on second down. I don't know why they went to Jared Goff. I think they would have scored if they gave it to Gurley, but still, the lack of passing game usage, Field, is a concern.
No
but
question.
I agree with you. You have to... You're not going to get value for him in terms of a guy that has his kind of upside. You have to believe in sort of Sean McVay and that offense.
Trust the process.
Trust the process and figuring it out.
All right, last one here, and I think we both feel the same way on Baker Mayfield, Matthew. I'm panicking. I'm benching him.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been good enough. What inspires confidence? Don't tell me it's the weapons, because the weapons are there and they haven't been good, Matthew. And, by the way, talk about a schedule that's not particularly favorable. They play Baltimore on the road next week.
Right.
How do you feel about that one?
You're not starting them
You know
there.
where they go after that? San Francisco on the road. You just talked about the 49ers being better than you realized.
Yeah.
I think they return and then play the Patriots after that. Like, at what point does this feel like the obvious must start? So you have this.
Well, they play Seattle in week 6.
I'm sorry.
And then they have a bye in week 7, and they're
And
at the
then
Patriots
they
in
go
week, and then they're at Denver in week 9. They're home to Buffalo in week 10.
Right. So again, point here. I'm panicked. I'm benching Baker Mayfield. I love you, Baker. I want everything to get better. My heart hurts for Keith going again to the game last night.
Not cool, Keith.
I'm sorry. Like we just talked about 3 fill-in quarterbacks earlier. I think there are other options that you can pick up and play.
I'll go one better for you. If you're in a standard ESPN 10-team league, a redraft league where you only start one quarterback, like you don't want to roster 2 quarterbacks. Why wouldn't you drop Baker Mayfield? I'm not sitting here like saying you have to drop Baker Mayfield, but I will say that like if you did, I get it. We just talked about the schedule. The schedule looks brutal. He has looked bad. Forget fantasy points for a second. Just from the eye test, he doesn't look good. He doesn't look comfortable in this offense. There's something off. That offensive line is absolutely brutal. So far this season, so far this year, Field, Baker Mayfield has 34.1 fantasy points. He's the 25th quarterback in fantasy. Like he's QB 25. He has scored 34.1 fantasy points through 3 games this season. Yesterday, Daniel Jones scored 34.2.
That makes me...
Like, Danny Dimes has more fantasy points than Baker Mayfield this season. He's played 1 game. I'm just saying.
There's a joke to be made here about how Baker said you could never draft a player like Daniel Jones. Or I know the quote seems to have been twisted a bit.
Out of context.
He took I think it would be fair to categorize it as a bit of a shot at Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
I wonder if Daniel Jones will retort today. We know the answer. He will not.
Listen, I love Baker Mayfield.
Of course,
And
we
I'll
both
cop to this. Like I had him as a top 5 pick. Like I'll cop to have been completely top 5 quarterback, I should say. Yes, thank you. I had him as a top 5 quarterback pick this year. And so far, like this appears to be one of my biggest misses of the year. Like I was just
you were not alone in that.
Dead wrong on Baker Mayfield because the whole offense just looks completely lost. And I can't imagine the next time you would feel comfortable starting him in a 10-team, 1-quarterback league.
Agreed on that. Hiring can be a slow process. Cafe Altura COO Dylan Miskowitz needed to hire a director of coffee for his organic coffee company, but he was having trouble finding qualified applicants. So we switched to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job so you get qualified candidates fast. Dylan posted his job on ZipRecruiter and said he was impressed by how quickly he had great candidates apply. He also used ZipRecruiter's candidate rating feature to filter his applicants so he could focus on the most relevant ones. And that's how Dylan found his new director of coffee in just a few days. With results like that, it's no wonder 4 out of 5 employees who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for businesses of all sizes. Try ZipRecruiter for free at our web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. One more time for all those in the back. ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. We roll along here, Matthew, and sort of the speed dating portion of the program. Here's a strategy. You ready for this one, Matthew?
Yeah.
Really good quarterback has very good pass catchers who gets hurt. The players that step in to fill those pass catchers' roles, especially those that were drafted high, deserve to be in your fantasy lineup. That's the formula. You ready to see how it bears out? Yesterday, Patrick Mahomes. He is without Tyreek Hill, one of the highest paid receivers in football. Demarcus Robinson and Mecole Hardman, who's still available in more than 50% of leagues.
Preach!
Both score a touchdown, including Hardman, who had a long one. I get it. It was a coverage bust. You know what happens when you play the Chiefs? Sometimes you dribble down your leg a little bit and you forget your responsibility or you blow your responsibility. And guys score 85-yard touchdowns out of nowhere like Mecole Hardman. Nelson Aguilar. You know what round he was taken in? The first. 19th overall.
Right.
Oh, the real draft, not fantasy draft.
Yeah, of course.
Alshon Jeffrey, he was out. Deshaun Jackson, he was also out. You know what Nelson Aguilar did yesterday?
Balled
8
out.
catches for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
8.
Sometimes chalk is chalk for a reason.
Yes, exactly. It's like cliches are called cliches because they're said a lot. They're burned into existence.
Because they're true,
Good
right?
quarterback, talented wide receivers. Trust them.
Yeah.
I know that they will fail you every once in a while. But these are players that, with the opportunity there, Matthew, they need to be rostered in way more than 50% of leagues. And I get it. There's a shelf life on them because those players will return. But for now, you have to be encouraged because the Eagles play on Thursday night against the Packers. There might not be Alshon Jeffrey or Deshaun Jackson this week.
I would agree. By the way, I mean, so it's interesting here on Mecole Hardman. Like, Demarcus Robinson played 89% of snaps. Sammy Watkins played 93%. Mecole Hardman only played 60%, 59.4% of snaps. But there's still really, like, I think I would still prefer Demarcus Robinson to Mecole Hardman if you're talking about Chiefs wide receivers.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, like,
take shots on these guys.
If you're taking a shot on a guy, take the shot on a guy that's on a pass-friendly offense, that's on the field with Patrick Mahomes, that's, or even Carson Wentz in that case. Yeah, so we agree there.
You know what we realized?
Yes, sir.
Coming into the season, everybody wanted to know.
And I'm not worried about Sammy Watkins, by the way. I know the numbers have. You're like, whoa, Demarcus Robinson and Mecole Hardman are, he's still got a ton of looks, everything like that. It's going to be just fine.
You're going to be just fine.
If you have a piece of the Chiefs offense, you're going to be just fine.
Well, let's keep that piece of the Chiefs offense theme going. Damian Williams missed the game yesterday, knee injury. We knew that one going into the game. LaShawn McCoy entered the game a little bit bulky with that ankle injury, Matthew. Yeah. And Darrell Williams generated a little bit of pregame buzz. Yesterday, LaShawn McCoy played really well. He scored twice. But he got hurt late, and he was sort of a part-time player prior to getting hurt. Here were the snaps yesterday. Darrell Williams, not Damian, Darrell Williams, 34 snaps, 24 for LaShawn McCoy, 5 for Darwin Thompson. Let's imagine a world where Damian Williams does not return this week. LaShawn McCoy is banged up. Does Darrell Williams need to be rostered in all leagues going into this week when they play the Lions?
100%.
I agree. Yeah.
Like, there's a chance, and it's a better than average chance. There's a chance that he is the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs going in on Sunday. So he played 53% of the snaps in this one. Like, he had a nice game. And so, we'll talk about this. We should talk about it for 1 second real quickly, which is that, look, there was and I'll cop to my part in this, right? So we should just own it, right? So we were nervous about McCoy coming to this game, like bad ankle, only practiced fully in Friday. Stefania was concerned about bad conditions on the field, and we didn't know how much he was going to play. And then Adam Teicher, who does a great job covering the Chiefs for us. Adam Teicher tweeted out that he appeared based on what he was observing in pregame. And again, Teicher's covered the Chiefs for a long, long time.
Sure.
Teicher tweeted out that he thought Darrell Williams would be the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, and so I quote tweeted Adam's tweet and saying, like, McCoy is definitely a risky start, which I thought he was. And by the way, that ended up proving true on this level. He re-aggravated the injury, and he only played
24 snaps.
24 snaps. But he scored twice in that, and so egg on my face, and I'll cop to my piece of that. Like, I was going off the information I was presented with, and so I'll apologize to everyone for that. You can only make a call based on what you have in front of you.
Sure.
But we should own it. Like, that was bad.
It happens.
It happens.
And that's what reporters are paid to do. They're paid to observe and pass along information. And, there were a lot of people that passed along a lot of lineup information based off of pregame warmups yesterday. Probably 95% of those generated zero traction whatsoever, right? Because either A, it was like, here is the Bengals starting linebacker core, which has no fantasy relevance.
Sure.
Or B, it was, I'm just making this up again. The Ravens' first team wide receiver group includes Hollywood Brown. And he was accurate, right? So, this one, it's not Adam's fault. This stuff happens. So,
yeah, we're not. I'm merely. I'm taking this on myself.
Exactly.
I'm throwing myself under the bus. Is what I'm doing here.
This is part of the hedge of fantasy. Is you can't always get it right.
But if I'm going to pat myself on the back for Kyle Allen and Daniel Jones and Darren Waller and all that stuff, I also want to take a pie to the face and own it. You got to take the good with the bad. If you're going to pat yourself on the back, you also got to slap yourself on the butt once in a while as well. So that ended up not working out. But I will say, in one defense of me, is that during the week, I did talk about the fact that, hey, Darwin Thompson is a smaller back, and that if LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams were to miss this game, Darrell Williams is the guy that profiles as more of a starting running back type.
Yeah.
225 pounds, played at LSU. Here's a guy that we think Darwin Thompson is sort of a big play guy. Now, we didn't see enough Darwin Thompson that we thought we were going to yesterday. It's kind of a weird game. But Darrell Williams, who played 4 seasons at LSU, averaged over 5 yards a carry. Darrell Williams is a better player than you think he is. So that is a guy, we'll see what's going on with Damian Williams and with LaShawn McCoy. But as both are currently banged up at the moment, and you want the starting running back for Andy Reid. Just
Spoiler
period.
alert, he is making the waiver wire column this week. So we're going to come back in just a moment and talk about some crowded backfields, plus a couple of injuries of note, T.Y. Hilton being one of them. But first, we take a quick break and enjoy this clip.
Hey, Berry.
Hey,
yeah.
Strawman.
Yeah, I have to say, look, I thought this kid was just a typical bum. But then everybody's talking about him. He's got, he runs like a gazelle. He's got an arm like a cannon. I think he's going to be way better than that bum, straw-hating Tom Brady.
Really? You like Daniel Jones, Strawman?
Like, I love this kid.
Huh. I think you need to watch this. What are your feelings on straws?
I'm not a huge straw guy. I mean, I feel like I guess when you're somewhere and the dish you don't trust the dishes being clean, maybe you need a straw then. But otherwise, I'm a no straw guy.
All right, you're anti-straw.
Look into my googly eyes, Jones. I said you were a bum from the start, and I have never wavered. You will never succeed. You will never slurp the juices of victory like we, the common straws. I will destroy you, Jones. I will destroy you. You are a dead man.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy, focus.
Crowded backfields in fantasy football can be difficult to assess and sort through week to week. We've got 3 of them, but the first 2 kind of fall into a similar bucket. It's the Packers and also the Broncos. And speaking of bad calls, Matthew, I could not have whiffed harder on Philip Lindsay having a bad day against the very good Packers defense. I'm sorry, against a very good, Jesus, who do they play? They play the Packers. Wow, I'm starting to miss teams. I'm getting old. Philip Lindsay and the Broncos.
Welcome to my world.
I know, thank you. I'm just trying to be relatable. Philip Lindsay did not have a good day, or had a great day against the Packers in a game that I thought he would not.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones yesterday found the end zone once again.
Twice?
Found the end zone twice. Let me ask this, though. Aaron Jones and Philip Lindsay are in much closer to work shares than we expected them to be going into this season. Would you be...
I don't know if that's accurate. Because I think we talked up Royce Freeman, or certainly I did. I expected this to be a true running back by committee in Denver, and I was down on Lindsay coming into the season because of that, because I thought Freeman would take some more. But yes,
more than
Aaron
maybe
Jones,
the general public expected.
Fair.
How's that?
That may be fair. Certainly, given the success that Lindsay had last year, I think people were a little bit surprised. And so it's sort of like running backs going in opposite directions. You were down on Philip Lindsay coming into this game, as was I. Like, it's not like I was sitting there arguing against you for that one. So, I thought the Packers defense would play better than they did. They ended up winning the game. Listen, 3-0. Green Bay's happy today.
They're legit, yeah.
But Philip Lindsay ran hard, ran good. Like, that touchdown run that Lindsay had was a thing of beauty.
Well, did you see how he finished the run?
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Tackled by his offensive lineman into the end zone.
Right, it was unbelievable.
But
he kept running. But he kept. But
right. He finished it out. Yeah.
Right, he kept his legs moving, and defensive linemen that are much bigger than him were trying to bring him down, and they just couldn't.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So yeah, I mean, here's the thing on and Freeman left this game for a brief period of time too, but ultimately these are 2 guys that like it's still going to be a run-heavy offense. It's going to be a run-heavy offense. So I think they're flex plays. I think they're probably both viable flex plays, and we might have been too low on Philip Lindsay.
Sell high on Philip Lindsay or Aaron Jones. Because if you're calling them flex plays and they're both coming off of multi-touchdown games.
See, I think Aaron Jones is probably more of a running back too. And look,
so you're staying pat.
I'm staying pat with the Green Bay Packers. I'm saying that, like, if you're just sort of doing a stock watch after this week, I would say Aaron Jones' value slightly lower. We heard talk from Matt LaFleur saying that he felt like he needs to limit Aaron Jones' touches. We talk about free Aaron Jones all the time, and honestly, so still not free. I mean, Jamal Williams, by the way, looked like the better running back. In all fairness, he looked like the better running back in this game. Yeah,
I feel like sometimes it's overlooked that Jamal Williams was drafted 1 round ahead of Aaron Jones a couple of years ago, a player that they've always liked in Green Bay. So they've always thought highly of him as a player. One thing to note on the Packers, just how difficult their schedule has been out of the gates. 3 good defense they've played.
That's correct.
But maybe things open up a little bit for Aaron Jones in a few weeks. They play the Eagles on Thursday. Eagles, very good run defense. They play the Cowboys, who hard for me to gauge how good their run defense is because they played they've played 3 opponents that I don't think people. Well, I guess Saquon Barkley was awesome against them. That's so I take that back.
Yeah, I mean they beat up on the Redskins, which has no offensive line, and they beat up the Dolphins, which doesn't count.
So I am in on the Dallas matchup looks good. Then Detroit. Detroit's actually a very good run defense.
I agree.
And then then Oakland, Kansas City, the Chargers, and Carolina. So things might open up a little bit for Aaron Jones. Give me some patience on Aaron Jones here.
Yes, I think that's well spoken. I think people forget they played Chicago, they played the Vikings, and then they just played Denver. So 3 really tough defenses to start the matchup. And what should encourage you is that Aaron Jones is still having good fantasy production, even though he's splitting time, even though he hasn't looked great. Because here's the thing: the Packers' offense, it is run heavy, it is slow paced. And they're 3-0, it's working. So don't expect them to hit the panic button and all of a sudden this is the high-flying Aaron Rodgers throwing it 45 times a game offense.
I still believe in the Eagles as a team going forward. I think they're going to be in the playoffs when push comes to shove. But I don't know that I've learned anything about how to assess this backfield other than I'm not sure you can play any of them, right? Yesterday, Miles Sanders plays 23 snaps. Jordan Howard and Darren Sproles both played 24.
Yeah.
Howard found the end zone yesterday.
Right.
But can you feel good about playing any of these players week to week?
If I had to pick one, I think it's Sanders, who's getting involved in the passing game here. He had one big play, which sort of inflated the stats there. But still, against the Packers, we just saw Philip Lindsay run all over the Packers. Yeah. So Thursday night in a game where they're still banged up, at the receiving, on the receiving core, and certainly J.J. Arcega-Whiteside didn't do anything that gives you confidence. He dropped what, potentially could have helped them win the game. It was a tough ball, but still, you got to make that catch. And so, am I confident starting Miles Sanders? No, but could I understand if somebody did, especially starting with buys next week? Yes, I could. And he's who I would prefer. If I had to pick an Eagles running back going forward, I still prefer Miles Sanders. But Jordan Howard's not going away.
I made note of this last week on the podcast, and I think it's worth repeating again. When Miles Sanders is no longer returning kickoffs for the Eagles, maybe I'll feel better about it.
Fair.
I just don't think you have your starting running back returning kickoffs. And
generally speaking, you do not.
Nearly got decapitated in that game, and somehow the refs didn't call.
That was an incredible. I cannot believe that was not called.
I don't know what to tell you. I'm not sure what could have been more egregious about that, and yet no call.
Also, Miles Sanders put the ball on the ground twice yesterday.
Good point. Another good point, Daniel. And coaches hate nothing more than players who put the football on the ground. If T.Y. Hilton misses any time due to his quad injury, Matthew, because he left the game yesterday early after scoring his fourth touchdown in 3 games, is there any Colts wide receiver that can pick up the slack in his absence that you could feel comfortable starting with Jacoby Brissett, who we talked about earlier on in the show? Looking pretty darn good.
Yeah, and no, there's no one that I feel like, it's definitely going to be Zach Pascal or Paris Campbell or Deion Kane. I don't have enough confidence that I feel like I think he will spread it around. I think you'll see the tight ends get more involved, but they want to go run heavy, and credit to Marlon Mack, who fought through an injury and got back out there and looked like Marlon Mack. Right. So no, I don't think there is I don't know. Did any of these guys make the free agent fines column?
Nope.
Yeah,
they did not. And I don't know if it reminds me quite of the running backs we were talking about earlier, fill-in running backs. You have to talk yourself into any of them. It's a good matchup. I just don't know for sure which one would be the gut, because there's not a clear-cut second most talented and established. I think Paris Campbell will eventually be the second best wide receiver.
I agree with that. I like him from a dynasty perspective.
But Deion Kane played a lot. And by the way, T.Y. Hilton might play next week for all.
Yeah, we don't know.
So I think we're sort of patient here on picking up any Colts pass catcher and feeling like there's a guarantee one of them will be a star.
Yes, 100%.
Tell us about Century 21, Matthew, because
I can do that.
After that, we have a very special read about a certain wide receiver that was a baller on Sunday.
The Fantasy Focus Football Podcast is presented by Century 21 Real Estate. You constantly shuffle your lineup, scour the waiver wire, and make trades to improve your team. Shouldn't you spend the same amount of time looking for a real estate agent who makes as many relentless moves as you? 70% of people settle for the first agent they meet. Did you keep the kicker you drafted?
No.
Of course not. Century 21 agents go above and beyond to make sure their clients enjoy an extraordinary experience at every point of the home buying or selling process, even after closing. They do the work so you don't have to, which means more time for you to figure out your flex situation. Century 21, relentless moves. Find a local agent today at century21.com. Century 21 Real Estate LLC fully supports the principles of the Fair Housing Act and the Equal Opportunity Act. Each office is independently owned and operated.
Good stuff there, Matthew. And yesterday, Mike Evans shows us why he was drafted as wide receiver 9. And it's Relentless Moments brought to you by Century 21, as Mike Evans had 1,000 fantasy points yesterday. Not literally, but he did have three receiving touchdowns. I believe all of them came in the first half, by the way. Monster day for Mike Evans. He was the topic of our conversation last week. We said, guys, trust the process.
By the way, I was all in on Winston again this week, and I'm just like, oh, God, is this going to be another, right, won me a board bet against you, and I was just like, oh, is this going to be another Lucy pulling the ball away? And I preached patience on Mike Evans. I know others did as well, and so happy to see this. Like, he took Janoris Jenkins, to the shed. It was unbelievable.
That wasn't right.
No, that was
impressive.
He was a bad man. So great to see. And look, I'm not worried about Chris Godwin coming. It's going to the situations that happen.
Two awesome games before a pedestrian game.
That's correct. It's still going to be a fantasy friendly offense. The reasons we liked Evans and Winston and Godwin coming into the season was the fact that it's a defense that can't stop anyone. They're going to have to throw. They're not going to be able to run that ball that much effectively, and so they're gonna have to throw. And when they throw, it's kind of a narrow route tree, right? It's Evans, it's Godwin, and maybe a little bit of O.J. Howard. We saw flickers of life.
I saw him catch a ball yesterday.
Right.
I saw him catch a pass.
We saw flickers of life. Signs of life there. But anyway, Mike Evans just an absolute stud, and obviously why he was drafted as a top 10 wide receiver this year.
So Mike Evans played really well yesterday, in part because his quarterback played really well, Matthew. Yep. Jameis Winston was rock solid. I don't think he turned the football over. Definitely didn't throw an interception. But was Jameis Winston's big week 3 merely a byproduct of the opponent, or is Jameis rectified and all of a sudden Jameis Winston can be a quarterback that you can start going forward? He was, again, yesterday, lights out, but against the Giants.
Right. And I think the argument is both. I think the answer is both. Do I think it was a product of a bad Giants defense? Yes, and they'd also had 10 days to prepare, and it was a home game. I mean, we talked about this. Week 1 against the 49ers, which I think we need to give the 49ers defense more credit than they're getting. Right? I mean, ton of turnovers yesterday as well. So some bad turnovers. They've done some nice job disguising their schemes and fooling quarterbacks into making turnovers. Week 2, road game, short week, bad weather, and still, played decently in that game. Didn't have a huge fantasy day, but didn't turn the ball over. Looked better. He's getting more and more comfortable in Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich's offense here. And so then you think about this schedule here. At the Rams next week, then at New Orleans, home to Carolina. Oh, not home to Carolina. It's a London game. They play the Panthers. Then they have a bye week at Tennessee, at Seattle. None of those games scare you defensively. They
don't play at home until November 10th.
November 10th, and it's September 23rd.
Right.
What? That is their next home game is November 10th.
But you're talking about, right, so exactly, they may lose a lot of those games, but do I think there's going to be junk time against the Rams, against the Saints, against the Panthers? Yeah, wow, I do. Against the Seahawks.
My comment was not, I wasn't trying to interrupt the fantasy talk. I'm just stunned. November 10th.
That's brutal.
Wow.
That's tough.
That's a long time.
A long time. I mean,
the Raiders
they'll have more games in London than they will in Tampa Bay in the next month and a half.
I had heard a lot about how the Raiders had the same, whatever this is, 6-week gap, because the Raiders, after their week 2 home game to Kansas City, didn't play at home again until November 3rd. Same thing. They play in London. They've got a bunch of road games, and there was a lot of griping from John Gruden. I did not realize that about the Buccaneers.
So that's tough, but my expectation here is that, Jameis Winston he's going to be Jameis Winston, which is there's going to be some games where you want to pull your hair out, right? Or wish you had hair to pull out, right? But ultimately,
you must have been a Jameis fan for a real long time.
I've been a Jameis fan for a long time.
Yeah.
I have been a Jameis apologist for a long time. That is very true.
Yeah,
that is very true. So, but yes, so I think it's a byproduct of the bad defense. I think it's a bad byproduct of them having to throw because also they have a bad defense. I mean, in that game they were up and then Daniel Jones came back, but. Do I think this is repeatable? I do, and I do think Jameis Winston. Rest of the season, real quickly. Who would you rather have, Jameis Winston or Baker Mayfield?
Oh boy,
I'll say Winston.
I'll go with Winston, even though I still have I still have a hard time.
100%. I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I'm not all in. All is forgiven. It's fine. It's Jameis Winston. Right. There's going to be some bumps in the road coming up.
Right.
But
it's the peaks and valleys of Winston that you have to Whereas the peak, Baker had some great games last year, but we've seen a higher fantasy ceiling with Jameis Winston. whose weapons are utilized.
Here's a question
more
for you.
effectively. Okay.
Field Yates, I'll wait to see what your rankings are tomorrow. But
let me
in the
guess.
War Room League that we're in, our 16-team league, I have my starting quarterbacks, Jameis Winston.
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones. Danny Dimes, who am I starting next week?
So the Giants play next week against
the Redskins. They're home against my Redskins.
I go with Danny Jones.
I think so.
Daniel Jones. Got to be Danny Dimes.
I think so.
Danny Dimes
at home against my Redskins.
By you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. But anyway, so picked him up last week. 16-team league, it gets dicey.
Yeah, it sure
dicey.
does. Okay.
Deep league.
Fair enough. Good stuff there. Tuesday, big waiver wire column coming. I got to finish that up later on today. So plenty of stuff on the waiver wire column. And of course, Matthew and I will also be recapping Redskins and Bears. That game is tonight. My guess, the Redskins play the Bears tough, but lose. You have less confidence.
I have less confidence. I would love that to be the case. I think they get killed. The Redskins always play brutal in prime time. It's just a bad team. We're a bad team. We're banged up. And I feel like, much like some of the other teams that we've seen where Jameis, their backs were against the wall and a lot of barking. I feel like that's the case with the Bears. Like people they kind of got a lucky call against Denver. Probably shouldn't have won that game. I actually think the Broncos got screwed by the refs on that game. I don't think the Bears should have won that game. And so people are questioning Matt Nagy and his play calling. Is Mitch Trubisky as franchise quarterback? So there's just all sorts of noise out there. And so my expectation, I think Trubisky goes out and just balls out tonight. I think the Bears try to, on a national stage, bad matchup, or a good matchup, I should say. I think the Bears just ball out and just kill them.
Okay, we'll find out if Matthew is right. I think it's a little bit closer.
Please, Terry McLaurin, I'm begging you. I need a big game and we need a better nickname than Scary Terry.
We agree. Scary Terry's just not doing it. I've heard Scoring McLaurin.
I like that one.
Good. So Scoring McLaurin could be one.
F1 McLaurin.
Yeah, could work.
What about Larry, Jerry, Terry? Oh, dang. There's got to be a Parks and Rec thing here.
Ooh, good idea.
Larry, Jerry, Terry, something like that.
I've heard the law firm of Larry, Jerry, and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, like that.
So that's a lot for one nickname. My Scoring McLaurin might be my favorite.
I've seen other people on Twitter suggest McLovin, which I kind of like.
I kind of like McLovin.
McLovin.
I'm into that.
Shout out to Superbad, but so we'll see. So listen, hope springs eternal for my Redskins, but I'm
they're going to win by 30 tonight.
Okay, just watch. Yeah, I would love that. We'll see if that happens here. But I will say, if you're playing daily fantasy, RotoPassDaily.com, baby. RotoPassDaily.com. You get Number Ball and Roto Grinders and ESPN Plus and all sorts of great stuff. Check it out. If you play DFS, if you play DraftKings or FanDuel or any of the daily fantasy sites and you need some help, I've partnered with a guy that literally is the best DFS player in the world, a guy named Jeff Collins. So check it out, RotoPassDaily.com. If you use the promo code LAUNCH, LAUNCH, you get 15% off.
Very nice. 15% off. We're coming back tomorrow, Tuesday, Waiver Wire, Monday Night Football recap, and so much more. We'll talk to you then.
Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus later today. Peace out.
If you need a stick of Tide, Field is your guy. If you're in Bristol or in Farmington, you should find another ride. Candidly, he hates Mike Clay, and you know that it's a fact. Every Yater's gonna Yate, 'cause he's on TV every day. A spicy tomato who's got the stats and tweets that'll make you laugh. He's our favorite host, and everybody knows his name.